Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about why the Harley Davidson FXR is the best Harley ever made. Let's check it out. What is going on, YouTube? FX Deals Brooklyn is back in the building. And yeah, this has been a requested video that I thought I would touch on, especially since I've been doing so many FXR miles as of late. Before we begin, if you've been enjoying this content, please consider supporting our Patreon. Whether you just want to support this type of content or you want some extra content or some deeper cuts. And as always, we do have hats, sticker packs, and t-shirts available. Something else that's worth mentioning for a video like this is one of the things that I actually love about doing YouTube is specifically on my channel. I'm always really impressed and appreciative of some of the comments that get left on some of these videos. Especially when I do videos on the FXR, just the knowledge base that some of you have, that you take the time to share, is really appreciated. I do read it, and I always walk away from doing these videos, always learning something new about this bike or one of my Dynas, and it's appreciated. So what I'll say is, if you're watching this, do check out the comment section, because I know I always learn something new, or there's always something insightful there, specifically on these FXR videos, so do check it out. So people see me sometimes posting or reposting some of these memes where it's like basically saying, hey, I have this Dyna that I poured like $20,000 plus into, which is true, that's my FX DLS, right? And then I have this clapped out FXR with miles unknown. And then the meme is always getting at how I would always prefer riding this bike over the Dyna that I have significantly more money into. In terms of performance parts and everything else. And people see this and sometimes they think I'm kidding, or my friends think I'm kidding, and then they ask me about it, and then I always respond, no, it's not a joke. I actually do enjoy riding my FXR significantly more than my Dynas that I have a lot more money poured into. And people find this confusing. And I kind of find that there's two types of Harley riders out there, and there's Harley riders that have ridden FXRs, and there's Harley riders that have not ridden FXRs. And I know it sounds really hipster of me to say this, but it's always really clear. It really is the type of thing where it's like, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you probably haven't ridden one of these yet. Because even from the first time I stepped on an FXR until now, 2 years later of owning an FXR, I still hands down say that this is my favorite bike to ride in terms of a Harley Davidson. And there are many reasons of why I actually do believe that this, even 3 decades later, is the best bike that Harley Davidson has ever made by far. And yeah, you guys know this bike, you know, I've touched on it. There's really not too much going on with this bike. I didn't do too much to it, right? We got the bags, we got the exhaust, you know, it's got some brakes, some rotors, a little quarter fairing, did a little bar job. There's not too much going on with this. It's still the stock 80-inch Evo with a cam in it, so nothing really crazy going on with this bike. And even still, it's still my favorite bike to ride, specifically in the scenario that I'm in right now, which is hitting a bunch of mountain roads out here. But yeah, let's hop on the bike and I'll give you some of my thoughts about this and we'll go from there. Starts right up, no issue. So yeah, perhaps the demand for this video, or why I've been getting a lot of questions lately, specifically about FXRs, is I think it's just quite clear that demand for these bikes is definitely going up. And I think just more people are starting to awaken to what's really going on with these bikes. I've said it before in other videos, I'll say it again. In terms of the riding that I'm doing right now, which is some good mountain twisties, right? Optimal riding, my favorite type of riding to do. This bike is always going to be the best tool in the shed for that type of riding. I've also said it before that although this bike will do fast highway speeds all day, I don't have it set up to really do that. You know, these bikes were not designed to sit on 80 plus miles per hour all day when they were made, so whenever I do ride this bike like that, I always come home and something's usually broken. So I try to not put this bike in that type of situation. That's what I use my Dynas for, right? But what I will say is, it'll do it. You know, I've said it before in another video, a buddy of mine had bought a more modern Harley Davidson, and I had no issue keeping up, and in some instances even pulling away from him on that new bike. But again, that's at the cost of breaking things. So that's the first argument for why I actually do believe that this is one of the best Harley Davidsons ever made, is because it is the most versatile, meaning you could optimally run this thing in the riding I'm doing right now, which is just basic mountain twisties, and it's gonna outperform pretty much any other Harley Davidson that I've been on. You know, and I'm talking about my Dynas with a significant amount more money put into suspension, right? This bike, I do not have much into the suspension at all. I'm running Super Shocks on this bike, which is a more kind of budget suspension, which is actually a pretty amazing suspension system for the money, which probably requires its own video. Sal Badfoot actually has a good video on that. And then the front suspension is completely stock. I left the air ride suspension in there just because I thought it was such a cool and novel thing, because they only put it in this bike for 1 year, so I didn't want to take it out. And honestly, it could be just because I'm on the smaller and lighter end of the typical Harley rider, but it performs very well for me, and I haven't done anything to it. So, versatility is definitely one of the arguments I would make for why I think this is one of the best Harley Davidsons ever made. It's gonna outperform, assuming that it's set up properly, which again, you don't have to do much to get these bikes set up properly performance-wise. It's gonna outperform your Dynas and the Twisties, you know, even with the amount of money you put into suspension. It's gonna pretty much outperform any other Harley Davidson that I've been on, at least in at least the twisty environments. Now, I'm gonna put it out there, I can't say that I put enough miles on the new Softails to really say that that's true on those frames. And then again, you know, if I'm in New York City, you know, I rode this thing all winter as a daily commuter in the city, and it performed phenomenally. It's a great and light bike to throw around and tactical maneuver as you're navigating your New York City chaos. And like I said, when I needed it to, it performed on the highway. Not to the speeds that maybe I wanted it to, but there are upgrades that you can do to these bikes to make them do that, you know, and I have a lot of friends out there that do make those upgrades and tour on these bikes and rip highway miles on these bikes, and these bikes do them phenomenally. So yeah, that's definitely one reason, is versatility, but I think the biggest reason overall why I think it's the best Harley Davidson ever made is actually a really, really simple reason. I don't have to say much about it, but it just really comes down to handling and the smoothness of the ride. You know, like I said, I don't have a lot of money tied up into the suspension of this bike, and yet still, even with the Super Shocks in the back and the stock suspension in the front, this bike just glides in a way that none of my Dynas have ever done or probably ever will, and that's with high performance suspension in both my Dynas. You know, it just takes the irregularities in the road like nothing else and just glides over them to the point where you barely even feel it. And then in terms of throwing the bike around, look at that. It's like there's no other Harley Davidson that you're throwing around like that, and that's at low speeds and high speeds, and again, that's due to the frame and the weight of the bike. So again, you know, everyone says it, but it is true. Nothing beats the handling on these FXRs, and that's with minimal work done to the suspension. And not just the handling, but even if you're riding straight, like right now, you point this bike and it goes. And it just sits and it goes straight. There's nothing pulling you side to side. It just goes straight like an arrow. And again, I'm not like talking trash on my Dynas. Obviously, I love my Dynas, but if we're talking about an all-around best Harley Davidson ever made, you know, it's got to be an FXR. And I'm not even on a fancy FXR. I'm not even on the quote-unquote better year, which is the, you know, 93s. You know, I'm on my 88, and every time I'm on this bike, I'm always just so happy and blown away, man. So yeah, that meme about having your Dyna with a 20k plus into it, but still riding your clapped out FXR, it's totally true. You know, and people think I joke about that, but that's my reality. You know, if I have a choice and I don't have to do heavy highway miles for the day, I'm always gonna pick my FXR, you know? And again, what I would tell you is I'm not an expert on FXRs, obviously. You know, I've only owned this bike for 2 years. I'm still learning a lot about this bike. There's a lot I don't know about this bike even 2 years in. So, you know, don't just take my word for it or listen to my content. You know, there's a lot of other people out there that are accessible, that know a lot more and have a way bigger knowledge base on this stuff that I do. You know, for example, check out Badfoot's channel, you know, out on YouTube. You know, he'll definitely give you some great information about these bikes. He's someone who's actually taught me a lot about these bikes. So, you know, check him out as well as some of the other folks. Hell yeah, brother. The passing power of the Harley Davidson FXR. And hitting the curves. That is gonna put a smile on your face, man. But yeah, so I don't really see this trend stopping because it is what it is at the end of the day. It's undeniable. And if you're questioning it and you still think that your Dyna is better than that, if you still think that the Dyna platform is better than the FXR platform, all I can tell you is find a friend that has an FXR, trade bikes for the day, and go hit the twisties, and then let me know what you think after that. Because again, you all know I've spent countless miles on the Dyna platform, but at the end of the day, it's just the FXR platform that always has me coming back for more. You know, but don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not trashing my Dynas. You all know that's my bread and butter on this channel. You know, it's in the channel's name. So I'm not trashing my Dynas. I'm just saying that for a lot of the riding situations that I find myself in when I'm not touring, you know, my FXR is what I want to be on. You know, but honestly, if Harley Davidson ever made the best move that they can make, which is just remaking the FXR frame, you know, whether they put monoshock suspension or whether they put remaking the FXR frame and maybe putting a modern transmission and a modern drivetrain in it, I don't care if it's the Milwaukee 8, it doesn't matter. If they ever did that, I would sell any of my bikes immediately and put down a deposit. You know, that's the thing that I would love to see as a Harley Davidson enthusiast. But I don't think that's ever going to happen for reasons that I probably couldn't comprehend, but it is what it is. But that's my feelings on the topic, you know. Those of us who own Dynas and FXRs, you know, joke about it all the time, but at the end of the day, it's actually not a joke. You know, these bikes are, there's just something really special about them, man, which is why I would never let this bike go. And it's why I've stayed with this bike and put in the time and put in the money and put in the maintenance to get it running right, because if you have an FXR that's dialed in and you have it running right, there's nothing like it, man. There really isn't. But as always, I'll say it again, the comment section specifically on my FXR content is always really fruitful, so check out the comment section. I'm sure you'll learn something new, and if you're really wondering about this, just go hop on one, man. It'll answer a lot of questions. But as always, whether you're on a Dyna, an FXR, or something else, stay safe and stay low. Listen to the bad brains, practice a positive mental attitude, and on that, saw Brooklyn.